to the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Board of Education special call meeting for December 17th, 2019. I am Shay Woodbury, your chair. I'm officially calling this meeting to order. We'll go ahead and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our next order of business is the agenda review. I think there needs to be an adjustment to the agenda to add the CTE course. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
We'd like approval to add the CTE course request from early for an action item for approval.
So moved.
Any discussion or question about this adjustment to the agenda? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. The next order of business is the discussion items. The first item for discussion is the proposed revisions to Policy 9000 bylaws.
Good evening, board members. Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, Dr. Harrison, and the board. I'm here to provide for you all a brief overview of the Policy 9000 that was approved in the Policy Committee meeting just moments ago. As I stated at the board meeting on the 10th, the revisions to this policy effectuate the proposed change in the meeting structure for meetings going forward beginning in January. Under this new structure, you would collapse your committee meetings into one work session to be held on the second Tuesday of each month, and then the fourth Tuesday of each month would be your regular board meeting in the format that it currently exists. So with this change, you would have the option to hear all committee meetings back to back, beginning at 5 o'clock. Based on the comments and the feedback from the policy committee, we will ensure that there's some indication on the approximate length of time for discussion items so that if members of the public would like to come and hear just some things but not the entire meeting, they can kind of gauge when to arrive at those meetings. So we'll make sure that we be as open as possible as far as what the projected time limit is for those items so that members of the public can plan accordingly. And then of course at that work session during those committee meetings, you can take action to place an agenda item on a future board meeting in 2 weeks as either a consent item or an action item at that meeting. The other revisions to the policy just to kind of help to clarify the changes in this new structure, which again would go into effect in January with the work sessions and the regular board meetings. I'm trying to make sure this is the correct version of the policy here that does not include language with regard to recording those meetings. Again, based on your feedback in the policy committee meeting. So this one, unfortunately, is the wrong version. It includes language that says the work sessions will be recorded and posted, but however, that was not what was approved and changed in the policy. So that language will be stricken from the policy. I just want to make sure that that's clear, that particular sentence right here where it says work sessions will be recorded and posted within 7 days will not be included in the policy because that's not what was approved in the policy committee. So just want to make sure that the public and everyone who's watching understands that. Of course, the public is welcome to attend the meetings, and we discussed, or you all discussed, wanting to put some mechanisms in place to allow for the public to either submit questions, either electronically or on some sort of a note card or something so that they can submit feedback. But ideally, this actually gives them additional time to consider the items that are discussed during the work sessions because they will have 2 weeks before they actually appear on the full board agenda for action to be taken. I do want to just state, there were some questions about the time limit for which this proposed policy was posted. Under our policy development policy, which is policy 2430, I believe, if I've got my numbers correctly, and for all other policy revisions, the standard is to post those revisions for 7 days. Now, at the last board meeting, there was some discussion about posting the equity policy, which is a brand new policy, which obviously there's been a lot of community involvement, a lot of stakeholder input, and as well as some calls to have extended time to review that policy. that was posted for 30 days. But that was an exception to the rule. This policy was posted for 7 days pursuant to our policy development policy. I know I'm using the word policy a lot, so I apologize. But so that's why this one was posted for 7 days as opposed to 30 days. So I apologize for that miscommunication or misunderstanding. We did have individuals submit feedback through our website. On our website, where people were directed to submit feedback, it did say that it was posted for 7 days. So, and also this is a policy that started, you all just started discussing back in November 9th at your retreat, which of course was open to the public. So I did want to address that, and again, apologize if there was any miscommunication, but this policy was posted for 7 days. The equity policy was posted for 30 days, which is an exception to our normal practice. But if this is approved and goes forward, this schedule would go into effect in January for your January meetings, which was also a reason why it would be difficult to post this for 30 days, because that would take us into the new year.
Dion.
Yes, ma'am.
Excuse me, Attorney Jenkins. Point
okay.
of clarification. At our last board meeting, when we discussed changing the structure of our meetings from twice a month to once a month, the discussion did take place after many community members came forward and made comments, and they expressed concerns for their opportunities to speak before the board being limited from 2 times a month to 1 time a month. And so at that time, I did make the recommendation, and I did ask, and it was my understanding what I asked for was granted. And what I asked for was to give the public the opportunity to be surveyed and to be able to weigh in on whether or not this is something that they are in agreement with. And I heard we said when we were in the meeting before, in the curriculum, in the committee meetings before, that only 2 people responded. Well, we never had a survey. That's the first thing. There was not a survey, and I did ask for a specific survey for this specific change. And we have not had 30 days. And I assumed that the public would have that amount of time, and as we ended the meeting in the committee room, that has been brought to my attention again, and not only with members of the public, but even with some members of the board, that they thought the public would have 30 days to be given the opportunity to respond. So I think that that is the request we need to, understand the public expected, and maybe not follow through on this vote for policy 9000, the changes tonight for the structure of the meeting, and give the public the opportunity to be surveyed as they expected because it was requested, and then come back and vote after we are able to gather that data from the public. So that's my request.
So I do recall you bringing that up at the last meeting last Tuesday, and I believe, if I recall correctly, what I said in response was that the policy would be published and for public comment, and people could email me their public comments. And also, there was also a follow-up conversation that you and I had about that, and I emailed you the process by which people can submit their feedback. So I thought that I was accomplishing the intent and the spirit of what you wanted, which was to publicize a way to solicit feedback. Our policies don't allow for or don't account for a survey to be done. If that's something that the board would like to be done, then you can certainly take action to do that.
Well, the board did not deny that request when I made it last week, so I assumed that the board, it would be fine. We were all right here. I made the request, and the board did not say, we don't want the public to be surveyed.
We need an official, we would need an official vote.
What I would add is that the assumptions are killing us, so we need to get to the facts of how to conduct our business. It's what I would say, one. Secondly, at our last board meeting, I thought Dion was clear about, although there wouldn't be technically a survey, the community would have a chance to give us their opinions about the new bylaw change. And that would serve as the survey, as a substitute, because we wouldn't officially do a survey, but if they go on and give us their thoughts about the new changes, that would serve or accommodate what we were trying to get after as it relates to their feedback. I'm not sure if putting out a specific survey is going to yield us any better comments than what the community have given. I think right now the issue is, have the community had time to respond effectively based on what we assumed they knew as it relates to the time frame?
I agree. I don't actually, I didn't have an understanding that it was going to be a formal survey, but I did have an understanding that it would be 30 days. And it may have been the confusion between the equity policy coming out at the same time as this policy, but I left this room feeling there were 30 days.
And I would like to add to what Chair Woodbury said. It doesn't matter if it's a survey, it doesn't matter if it's a link, but what we told the public is what matters. We need to be very transparent, and if we said survey, and if a survey was not something that we all could support, we should have said that. I'm fine with taking a vote on how we're going to do it, but I do think that the public has been waiting and expecting for 30 days to occur before we move forward.
Chair?
Yes.
My understanding is we discussed this change at our board retreat in November, and we talked about that there would be a change in the process, and that every board member who was present for the retreat was aware of that, and that we would be taking a vote in December about adopting this change for the next calendar year. And this is basically a board policy about how the board, as a board, conducts its business. So from my understanding, we've had quite a bit of warning before we got to this meeting that this was coming up for a vote, that we would indeed be voting at this point in December. We did have a special called meeting to make sure that we could have 2 votes on it. But I do believe that this came up in November at our board retreat, which again, as our attorney has mentioned, was indeed open to the public should anybody have chosen to attend.
We heard comments at the board meeting last time, and we heard comments from the public asking us not to limit their opportunities to speak. And I even agree with what Dr. Harrison said. This is an opportunity to improve communication and not decrease communication. So I only spoke up on behalf of the public. They spoke at that meeting, and we cannot ignore what they said.
So Dr. Harrison's recommendation was, are we going to take a vote? I don't think to take a vote on the survey is the issue. I think the issue is the time frame. And I think, it may yield us some value right now to have a discussion about, based on the calendar, the first work session would be on the 14th, which gets us prepared for the 28th. And so we would have, if it be the will of the board to give opportunity 7 more days maybe for the community to respond to the bylaws change, and then the burden would then be on us as a board to have a special call meeting to vote on bylaw 9,000 before the 14th. I think what I would say as a board member is that technically everyone here knows that our New Year meetings would start in a different way. Therefore, we had to handle specific business to adjust for that. And so now to change dates creates conflict with what business we have to have taken care of in order for us to move in this new direction. And I agree with Elizabeth. We should have been more intentional about our concerns before now that we have to try to, make some decision in order to move forward as, with our new bylaws for our organizational change. So I would ask that the board consider giving more time for the community to have comments about the new change, but not 30 days, because we just don't have the time based on our new schedule. We would have to have something in play before the 14th, which is our first work session.
So here would be a thought. Does somebody want to make a motion? My concern is that we heard a couple comments at the end of the last board meeting, but the decision to do this really belongs to the board. The board is trying to find a way to start doing a better job of doing the business of the board. My biggest concern as a board member is I want us to be focusing on the well-being of our students and getting to the work that we are called to do. And at the end of the day, if you want to vote and you want to be able to put up your hand based on what decisions the board makes, then you have to run for the school board and serve on the school board. This is our decision. This is our meetings. This is our process. We hear from people, but it is ultimately our responsibility. In the same way it was our responsibility to hire a superintendent, it is our responsibility to come up with a good way to do our business and focus on the work that is ours. So my suggestion would be that do we want, does Ms. Burke want to make a motion about extending and doing a survey and see if we get a second and then we take a vote?
That would be in the action item, so if we just.
Right.
Yeah, okay, so that would be a consideration, Board Member Burke, that once we get to the action items, you could make a motion during that time. Right now, we're just having discussion about policy 9,000 bylaws, which is where we are right now. Anybody else have any questions or discussions for Dion?
Well, I do have a question. If I'm making a motion and you said that you're not in favor of providing 30 days, what date are you, how many days are you going to give the public?
Well, my discussion would be another 7 days because, again, if we're looking at the new calendar, the first work session is on the 14th. And so we need to take action before the 14th of January.
Okay, so our last board meeting was December 10th, is that correct?
Is that December
Yes.
10th? Okay.
Yes.
If we give the public 30 days, that's going to take us to January 9th, and that will be before our first work session, January 14th.
Okay.
Could we do that?
So that's what I would suggest. When we get to actions, you make a motion to extend the, you could make a motion to extend the comment period to January the 9th in light of course, after that, we would have to figure out, by that Monday to have a special call meeting to vote before we move into the first meeting on the 14th. Am I right, Dion?
Yes, Madam Chair, that's what I was going to clarify. If you did that, you would have to have a special call meeting between the 9th and the 14th to approve the policy.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any further question or discussion?
How
So
far in
let me-
advance,
let
though,
me-
of the 14th would it have to be to give the public notice that there's a change in the format?
So first, we have to clarify, Ms. Jenkins, Attorney Jenkins. First, we have to go back to the calendar. The calendar committee, because you have to default to the current calendar before you can move forward to assume the 14th is the correct date. So the first policy committee, the first committee meeting should be scheduled if we maintain the current calendar on which date?
It would be the 14th.
Okay, so that would be the first, and that would be which committee?
Well, that wouldn't be policy committee. The 14th would be finance and buildings and grounds.
So
If
that's the first one. And so the agenda setting for that, we'd have to have all agenda items for those on the 10th. And so anytime the 9th or before would still do, so we need to make sure that if we don't, because if not, we just have a regular calendar, right?
we have policy at the second board meeting?
Yeah, policy
Yes.
would occur at the second board
So
meeting.
we couldn't take a vote on the calendar until the 28th of January. The policy committee,
It wouldn't have to come back to policy committee.
It doesn't have to
It
come back
wouldn't
to
have to come back to
policy.
policy
Because
committee.
policy's already approved it.
So we
Right.
just left policy, and the policy committee approved this policy.
As is.
It was not a unanimous vote, but it was approved. And so I understand that there somehow was some confusion with some folks about 30 days. It's been posted, when did you post it?
As soon as after the last board meeting, so
Okay.
on that following morning.
And so that's been how many days that it's been posted?
Today's the 7th day.
So it's 7 days out, and we've had 2 comments. And I think the board was made aware of what those 2 comments were, but I don't think it changed the mind of the majority of the policy committee. And so I'm just trying to look at the end result. Is there something that is going to be said between now and then, but then that's going to make us as a body go and change our mind that we're going to do this? We've talked about it since the retreat, and I'm not sure why we're trying to do this and inconvenience, I think, staff and really cause more confusion with people, because they're not going to know, are we back to 2 meetings, we're switching it again? I'm not sure where our end game is here, but no one has brought up, I think Ms. Burke has been in opposition of making the change, but she's been consistent with that opposition. But others have brought it across, and so here we are now trying to move all this stuff around. I don't understand the purpose of trying to do this. Is that those days going to make a difference and you're going to change it? I think we can keep it open, and I think maybe we hear feedback from the public so that when we can take that into consideration. We should never stop listening to our constituents, right? Mm-hmm. So we can constantly listen to them, but I don't know that we need to try to move all these things around. I'm not understanding the end game when we just left a policy committee meeting and it was voted on. I'm just trying to understand, but I believe if folks thought that they could comment, then leave it up and let's listen to the comments. And I even think in policy, we talked about that this could look different because this is new. And so I don't believe anything we're doing is set in stone, that we can't change it. It's our policy. If we do this for 6 months, it doesn't work out, there's nothing that says we can't go back. I just think we're so far down this, and we've been talking about this since November. I don't think we need to do this and cause more confusion and inconvenience with the staff right here at the holidays as well.
Point of clarification, Board Member Caudle Jones. I'm not in opposition. I am simply speaking regarding what I heard community members, the points or what they brought up at the last board meeting. I'm just speaking on their behalf.
Right.
I represent them. Thank you.
I have a question, Dion. This is past policy,
Yes,
correct? And so, in order, if we did do all this stuff, it would need to go back to policy, correct, to be voted on again?
If there were changes, but if there's no changes, it can just go
Okay.
to the board.
Yeah. I would rather see us make changes after we have lived with this for a while, simply because I do think that time for us to hear from the public, I think we'll figure out a good way to do that with these, and I think the public will figure out that they're going to have more of their questions answered during those meetings, and they think that they will. And so I just kind of feel like if we all live with this for a little while, that that then we'll be able to fine tune this and make some changes. And maybe after everyone's lived with it, maybe that's the time to do a survey, because none of us, the 9 of us included, know what this is going to look like right at this moment. So I would maybe think a better time to survey folks would be 6 months down the road.
I just want to say that an opposition vote to this may not be based on an opposition to this policy. It may be that the confusion around the comment period is really on us, that we have to be very clear in our language and what we're saying, and if we caused confusion, that is on us.
And if I caused any of that confusion in my comments, I apologize. I don't recall saying 30 days, but again, I think maybe their assumption was because equity policy was extended, that this one would be too, but.
I mean, we have it on video. I mean, we video our board meetings, so we should look at the video and see if we said that it was going to be for 30 days. I mean, that's point of the reason.
Well,
That's one of the
the
reasons.
call board meeting was for the purpose of this policy. It was for the purpose of this policy and the calendar. That's why the staff and we're all here is for this. There's no other reason that we would be here this evening, because we don't have a meeting. And that's the purpose of it. And when we look at it, so I just want to be clear that if we do this, we need to get the comments before the 9th. If there's a change, we would bring it back to policy. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. If there's a change.
Then we would bring it back to
Policy committee would need to
policy. And so we
change.
would need to keep the November calendar as is and amend that process. And so we talked about it and we posted this on Friday. So if we thought that you all wanted to extend it, we would have pulled the call board meeting. We just wouldn't have had the meeting. This is the only agenda item we had. It was published well it was a huge article in the paper about this. And so if we felt that you were not going to want to move forward, we could have easily canceled this call board meeting. Again, it's the only reason we're meeting tonight.
I think that all of us understood what the meeting was about tonight. I think what threw some of us off, community folks saying they thought there was a 30-day versus 7-day period, and that then makes some of us feel uncomfortable about what the community thought they had as an opportunity to weigh in on this process. I do like where Board Member Jones is going by saying, we go ahead and make the vote, and then on the back end, just keep it open. And this is right now a fluid process. And as the governors of this process, we control it. So I think that we can, with all fidelity, tell the public, hey, we moved forward tonight with the vote, but we still want your feedback. Please continue to give it to us so that if there needs to be an adjustment, the policy committee can, deal with it and bring it back to the board at any given point in time.
Chair Woodbury?
Yes.
I'd just like to make one other comment. The people who were concerned about there not being 30 days made comments at the last board meeting before this policy committee meeting. It is not that the members who said we thought we had 30 days have not felt it important for them to share their feedback with us with great regularity. So it is not that there is some large public outcry for we don't get a chance to say what we think to the board. I think we've heard the comments. I don't think we're going to be hearing different comments. And I think that we had this called meeting indeed to vote on this. The superintendent is exactly right. She brought this up with us all in November. We did discuss it at our retreat session. And the public has indeed shared their point of view with us, and that there is nothing that says once you have, quote, public comments closed on an action, that people don't feel very free to continue to share their opinions with us as they do. So whether it's 30 days, 90 days, 180 days, or the next 3 years that we serve on the board together, the public has a chance and an opportunity to email us, to call us, to write us, to send us letters, to come to board meetings. So I don't think that we are shutting out the voices of our community.
Any other comments, questions? Thank you, Dion.
So I think I may be on the hook for the next couple
Oh,
of
okay, you're doing
discussion
the
items too.
2020 meetings, the 2020 meetings calendar.
Yes,
is the
so
next item.
in front of, at your seats today, there were a group of documents. I just wanted to kind of bring your attention to what those were. The first is the proposed 2020 calendar for meetings under the new structure under Policy 9000. Again, this was also introduced during your November 9th retreat meeting, and I just want to summarize what that would look like in the event the board moves forward tonight to approve the changes to Policy 9000. They're color-coded for kind of ease of knowing which meetings appear when. The green codes or the green squares represent your grievance calendar. Those are on the first Tuesday of every month, with the exception of a couple of months where there are holidays or other days that would require a change. But wherever there's a square, that would be your grievance session. The yellow squares are the agenda setting days. Those are the days that the superintendent and you all would have the option to call in to hear what's going to be on the upcoming agenda for the next meeting. The blue squares would be your work sessions. Those would take the place of the first regularly scheduled board meeting of the month. And then the orange squares would be your regular board meeting, which is on the fourth Tuesday of every month. And so that would be this is the new proposed calendar for 2020. There are not currently any meetings scheduled for July. Traditionally, the board has kind of taken the month of July off as a vacation. It's much needed come that time of year. So there are no meetings scheduled for July. However, if there was a need for a special called meeting, one could be called to approve a contract or whatever the case may be. And of course, special called meetings can be approved at any time. So are there any questions about the proposed
I
2020
have a
calendar?
question about the agenda setting meetings. Will we have a specific time for those meetings, and will everyone be part of the call-in at the same time?
We're recommending that we go back to the 3 o'clock time, and then everyone will have an opportunity to call in. Everyone will be sent the information to call in.
Thank you.
One question that I have, there's a certain time that I know that I'm not going to be here for a meeting, and I'm sure everybody else feels that way at certain times. How is the best way to address that? Do we need to write to our chair and tell them that we will not be at such and such meeting? And I'm mainly talking about our main board meeting. I haven't seen any way to address whether we're going to be here or not be here. Is that necessary, or how should we do something like that? Do we just call our chair? What do we do on that?
I would recommend we take official attendance at board meetings. It becomes a part of the agenda setting that attendance is taken, and that becomes a part of the record. That's typically how you address it. There's no need to let everyone know, the board chair, of course, but I would recommend we take official attendance as part of the minutes in the board record.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions about the calendar? Okay. The next document that you have in front of you are the proposed board norms and protocols. These are on the agenda tonight for discussion only. We're not asking that you take action tonight. We're proposing to bring this back in January after you've had an opportunity to review and consider and think further about these. But I developed these proposed norms based on the feedback that was provided in your original retreat back in February, as far as your individual commitments to the work of the board, as well as the proposed norms and protocols that I provided to you at your November 9th retreat. So I've kind of taken pieces of each of those, as well as your feedback, and develop some proposed norms, but this is just a draft. You are, of course, welcome to change it however you would like, formatting or otherwise, but I did just want to at least give you a starting point for what those norms might look like. What we're proposing is that these norms would be reviewed and approved annually at your annual reorganization meeting, and that the chair of the board would be the one responsible for, quote unquote, enforcing these norms. And if there's ever an issue, or if someone feels as though members of the board aren't abiding by the agreed upon norms, that the chair would be responsible for kind of facilitating that resolution. But again, these are just proposals to give you a starting point for your consideration, but we're not asking that you take action on these tonight. So I'm welcome to take any questions or comments that you have.
Are we, well, I guess we are free, but I guess I would just put on record that board members should feel welcome to send suggestions to Dion before we take action on them, so that we kind of have a good picture of what it will look like when it gets back to us to vote on later. Do you know when, January maybe at 28th possibly?
Perhaps at the January 28th meeting, if
Okay.
the board's prepared and ready to take action at that time. But in between now and then, feel free to email me your feedback, or Dr. Harrison, your feedback or questions about it if you have any concerns.
Okay, thank you.
So the next document, on the subject of norms, since you had your reorganization meeting last week and elected the chair and vice chair, we did not have an opportunity to review the Code of Ethics or any of the other kind of policies that it helps to review on an annual basis. And our policies do require that the board members submit a conflicts of interest questionnaire on an annual basis. And so what I provided for you is a copy of your Code of Ethics, just for your review. I did want to note that the Code of Ethics, several of the provisions of the Code of Ethics align with the proposed norms and protocols that I provided to you, so you can see definitely how those documents match up. But in addition to that, the policy on conflicts of interest and the requirement to disclose those on an annual basis. And so what I'm asking is that as soon as you have an opportunity, it seems like some of you might be doing it tonight, that you complete the conflicts of interest questionnaire and return that to me. I've got to submit those to our auditor as soon as possible. Are there any questions at all about the conflicts of interest questionnaire?
Is there a date that we need to have the conflict of interest form filled out?
If at all
Deadline.
possible this week, just because I won't necessarily be as available next week. I imagine you all probably won't either. But since our auditor is in the process of working on the audit, I'd like to get this to them as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you.
So if you have them tonight, I'll be happy to take them tonight after the board meeting.
Are there any other questions or discussion for any other discussion items? Thank you, Dion.
Thank you.
The next order of business is our action items. The first item is to consider approval of policy 9000 Board of Education bylaws. Is there a motion?
Second.
Any further discussion or question? All in favor? Any opposed? The next action item is to consider approval of the 2020 Board of Education meetings calendar. Is there a motion to approve? Any discussion or questions? All in favor? Any opposed? The next action item is to consider approval of policy 4141 salary schedules. Is there a motion?
Second.
Any discussion or question? I do have a question. Did we have discussion about the 4141 salary schedule?
We discussed it in finance.
Oh, I think I missed that meeting, that's why, sorry. Okay. Okay. Is there anything, Dr. Harrison, you can tell us that we need to be mindful of from that meeting? or are we putting you on the spot of trying to remember? I understand.
Well, no, not at this time. I really can't.
Okay.
She spent quite a bit of time, Frida spent quite a bit of time with the adjustments. I think most of the adjustments were required by the state, if I'm
Okay.
correct. That's where most of the adjustments came in, with those adjustments made by the state. The budget would approve certain raises, and we needed to align our pay schedule. Also, there was a pay adjustment for our senior team members that was reviewed in transparency. Those were the two primary ones.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The next action item is the resolution to appoint Andrea Gillis as CFO. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve?
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion or question? Dr. Harrison, is Ms. Gillis here tonight?
Yes, she is. I'll ask her to stand. She's already on the
Oh.
job.
Okay, thank you.
And only discussion is, we're so glad to have you with us.
Absolutely. All in favor? Any opposed? The last item that was added is to approve the CTE courses that were brought to us today in the curriculum committee.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion or question? All in favor? Any opposed? All right. Well, the next order of business is adjournment.
Second.
All in favor? No need to discuss it.
Thank you for joining us on your school channel, Cable 2.